With Serah Williams in the fold, we'll talk. Is Kayleigh Heckel next? You're on the Hoops Guy.
Let's go. Even and Kristen, home of the dogs, Geno Auriemma. Pace takes the shot, never taking a fifth and 11 a block and she throwing ya. Look at the banners and look at the chips, out a couple or more and they can't be fit. Got Liam and Mika, AZ and P. If we scrimmage the sun, we probably beat them. Memorial.
Okay, welcome to a new episode of the Hoops Cat Pod, powered by Big East Energy. If you notice, we have a new intro song. Shout out to Automars for sending that to me. There's a video on YouTube that I will link to this. Did a literal YouTube video at or music video at the parade. So go check it out. It's awesome. So that's our new intro song. We have another piece of it for the outro. So stay tuned for that. We bring to the show, as always, on Friday, T. Baker. T, you weren't with me when Serah Williams signed, but I said on my show that you were fist pumping the air wherever you were. I think you were in NOLA. So all I'll say is, give me your first reaction to the Serah Williams signing, and then we'll move from there.
Yeah, well, you're right. I was fist pumping. I was on a plane back from Louisiana, and I texted you, I think, first, and then just reposted right away. I was very excited to see the news. Just an incredible piece to add to next year's roster. Really symbolic of like where the program is still at. I think, their ability to pull really huge recruits out of the transfer portal in competition with teams like LSU and also taking a player from a direct competitor, right? Like LSU is a team that's going to be perennially in the Elite Eight. So not only is UConn's strength up, but LSU has that loss, right? So it's kind of like a direct pull from a rival who could be a competitor come NCAA tournament time. So it's huge. I love it. And I was just very excited to see that news and to just kind of visualize what that could look like next year on the court.
What does it say to you from like a logistics standpoint? Because you and I were kind of having a couple of conversations around this, around her recruitment, around the transfer portal, that maybe UConn doesn't have all of the NIL money. Maybe they don't have like the most amount. Maybe they don't always kind of come in first with that. But doesn't it like warm your heart at least that something about foundation and winning and culture matter more than just the bottom line and how much money you can make?
Absolutely. And I think it's also a testament to UConn's coaching staff. I think, Geno Auriemma is the head of the program, but the recruitment and a lot of the conversations with these athletes who are interested in coming to stores happens with people like Jamel Elliott, Chris Daly, Tanya Cardoza, who in their own right are legends of our game. And shout out to them, shout out to their ability to be competitive, to sell the university. I mean, for Jamel, it's like selling her own experience, what she learned as a player. And I think it's always been an interesting model to have a former player on the staff who is so frontline in recruitment to really talk about that element of it. And also just to meet the players. I think that UConn has always been a program that's focused on authenticity, on really honest relationships between player and coach to get the best out of you. And it seems like that's what Serah Williams wants.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Okay. Before we even get into whether or not, the fit and everything, because I think it's a crazy good fit for Serah Williams and the rest of the UConn roster. There's another fish in the pond right now that we talked about this a while back too. Isn't it nice when you talk about the people that potentially could come to UConn and then they start coming to UConn? Like, I think that's always like a wonderful thing. Like, we can talk about wish lists and things like that, but when they don't show, it's like, oh man, like we were talking about that. But now these were two that we had from the start. Kayleigh Heckel, I love Kayleigh Heckel. I think she's incredibly fast in dynamic. Tell people what they're missing, because I think there's been some comments in my YouTube and other social media where it's like they don't get it. Like, maybe it's because she didn't play a ton last year because of being behind Juju Watkins. But how big of a talent is Kayleigh Heckel?
Yeah, I mean, once you get too far in the comments, Mark, you got to find your way out.
That's true. I do. That's true.
Proceed with caution there. I've learned.
I'm learning. I'm getting better.
With Kayleigh Heckel, it's a player who you're right, probably played a little bit of second chair, second fiddle to a player like Juju Watkins, but was one of the top recruits last year, a fast, dynamic guard, can play that point guard position. And I think that that's the piece that UConn wants to fill, right? Caitlin Chen was that steady point guard presence. And I think that's where Kayleigh Heckel can slot right in and has 3 years of eligibility remaining. So she's a player that could develop under UConn system, really thrive and transform into a pro one day. I think she's got that level of talent. So I think that's what she brings, is just that consistent point guard presence who can also score, who's fast, who can run with UConn's transition offense and just create options. And I think, we talk about sort of like the embarrassment of riches, like having the elite guard play that UConn has had for the past several years, combined with now one of the more formidable post presences in the country with Serah Williams, Sarah Strong, Jen Alfie. Like this is a really loaded roster at all positions, and so a lot of different lineups that could come out of these players.
Talk about that really quick before we get to the other big story of the women's college basketball world with Dawn Staley taking some shots at Geno. The embarrassment of riches in the lineups. Talk about the juxtaposition from just a couple of years ago to looking down at the bench and seeing like 6 players on IR, essentially, right? And now, barring, knock on wood, any injuries, you have, multiple talented players on your depth chart. Like even if you just mentioned the front court, you didn't mention Ice Brady, you didn't mention Gandy Malou-Mamel, you didn't mention Blanca Quinones, you didn't mention Ayanna Patterson, who'll be back. Like it's kind of incredible. Like they could field two. I feel like UConn could potentially field 2 top 10 teams if they just broke up their roster into basically into 2 teams.
Yeah. And it's really like, it's like the old days, it's like
Yeah.
the rosters that just like lineup 1, lineup 2 can beat most teams in the country. And it's fascinating to me as a historian of the game, as someone who pays close attention to the trends of the game, to see UConn back in that position, because a lot of people thought, me included, that maybe that had passed a little bit, right? Maybe it was towards the end of Geno's career. I didn't necessarily anticipate that he would have signed another 5-year last year. So just to be competitive in the new era of women's basketball just shows the foundation that is built in that program. And I think it lends itself well to the type of offense that UConn likes to play. A motion offense, quick transition up and down the court. You need fresh legs for that type of offense. And even when they had 6-7 player rotations because of injury, they still made it to the Final Four. They were still an elite team, right? But the gas tank ran out sooner, and you couldn't get the best out of players because they were exhausted. So it's what we see with Dawn Staley in South Carolina too, just depth of talent that allows you to basically run teams into the ground. And I think that's what we'll see next year. And just Serah Williams and UConn's elite guards and the pick and roll, Sarah Strong in the pick and roll. Like there's just so many beautiful offensive motions that can come out of this. And I can't wait to see the way that the UConn coaching staff makes that happen.
Yeah, you mentioned running teams into the ground. We're going to get to the next topic, but I have to mention this because it just made me think of. I just had a flashback to my college days, and I had a doubles partner that used to say he was Serbian, and he would say things like, "I love to demoralize my opponent," and that's the UConn and South Carolina way of just they don't want to play anymore. They're just so tired. They're so annoyed with you and how you play that they say no mas and they're done. Shout out Marion. I think he's in New York. So there you go. I'm going to take a quick break. And when we come back with T Baker, we're going to talk about Dawn Staley shots fired at Geno. I loved it. And we're going to talk about it coming up after the break. All right. We're back on the Hoopscat Pod powered by Big East Energy. Here with T Baker on a Friday morning, talking women's hoops. All right. So I'll pull up the quotes here in a second, but and I don't have the video for it because you can just find it. You can just Google it if you want. Dawn Staley, Geno Auriemma, and it'll be the first thing that pops up.
Statue
Gate. Yes. She was being. Let's set the scene. So she was being honored. She was getting a statue. Were they at the Capitol? Were they downtown, like where at the city Capitol, like that area? Like that's the only thing I wasn't clear on. Is that
downtown
true?
Columbia? I think it was outside of some sort of
Okay.
government building, but yeah, it was downtown Columbia, just a couple blocks from campus.
So she's getting a statue. It's actually a really cool statue where she's like literally cutting down nets. And she made a comment, I'm paraphrasing, I'll get the actual quote here in a second, that, contrary to one of my colleagues, Geno, his thought was that this statue, her A'ja Wilson statue, wasn't about winning championships. It was just about winning at life. Around that area, I think I paraphrased it well enough. What were your initial thoughts, and how well do you think that sits with UConn fans? And are South Carolina fans like celebrating this, or are they kind of like, I mean, they just beat our ass by 30. Like, why are we poking the bear? I'm just curious, like, what you think everyone thinks about this.
Yeah, well, first of all, congrats to Dawn Staley, like just absolute legend of the game. She didn't want a statue. She was very clear about that, but it was a organization that approached her Statues for Equality, which identified the disparities in women that have statues in the United States and men, and certainly Black women. So just an incredibly talented, legendary presence in our game. So shout out to her for that statue. I loved it. It was in response to Geno making a comment at a championship rally, like, oh, if you go to other schools and you win a national championship, you get a statue. Here, you don't even get to the back of the bus because, other players have 4, 3, 2 national championships. So what's one, right? That was the whole point he made. Her fire back was, it wasn't because we won a championship. Don't belittle our program. Kind of, that was the vibe. And I absolutely love it. I want more of it. I hope Geno claps back again. I hope we keep clapping back till we get that next time they play. They don't have each other scheduled yet, so I'm hoping that comes into the works and there's a really spicy reunion. But this is why we watch. This is why people compete. I don't think that there's like bad negative blood between these two coaches. I think there's a tremendous amount of respect, but they're both Philly born, they're both fierce competitors, they're both people at the top of their careers, and so I love it. And I hope there's more of it because it's a rivalry, it's a budding rivalry, right? And I think South Carolina fans always want a reason to attack Geno, and that's what happens to winners. They get attacked. they get the smoke. So you don't have that level of success without having some criticism and some people firing back on you and some people wanting to chip you down a little bit. So I don't know. I'm so curious about if they talk outside of this and are just like, LOL, did you see the video? Or like kind of how it plays out, or how they function in a personal relationship. But in terms of professional, just the competitiveness and stroking those flames, I absolutely love it.
I mean, it's well said. I think what's interesting is, I think most people are going to make too much of this because that's what people do. I think there's folks that are essentially professionally outraged by most things. And so this is just competitors responding to competitors. I also feel like too, rivalries or coaches or players, when there's rivalries, it makes the sport better. I want all of this, even if it's playful. Even if Dawn and Geno are literally texting each other on the side saying, hey, what would be really awesome is if we started this shit right now. Like, why not?
Yeah.
Like, we know we know that Dawn is going to already reloaded. Geno's trying to reload his team, which he already has. And they're going to be back playing against each other in the finals again next year. That's my thought. Like, this is the precursor to what will be another epic NCAA tournament final. And hopefully, and I say this with absolute no tongue in cheek here, like I want South Carolina to be better next year, because if they're not, it's going to be another 30-point blowout. Like, they better be ready, because this UConn team is essentially back. And it's so crazy to think this, because they just lost Paige Beckers. As a whole, not because they lost her, they might actually be better, just because her presence is going to be obviously felt, because just can't replace Paige Beckers. But in the aggregate, you may actually end up being better. What are your thoughts about that?
I mean, I think the huge advantage that they have is just the front court.
Yep.
And that's something they've had some deficiencies in recent years, some inconsistencies in. So in terms of all around balance on the roster, I think certainly they have a chance to outperform, to play a different style of basketball, to run themselves more through the post. And that's where they have traditionally fallen short against some of the other teams. I know Geno recently this past year mentioned that the pendulum is swinging back to that sort of like back to the basket big, those a big post presence. So to compete against players like Ashlyn Watkins at South Carolina, like Lauren Betts at UCLA, you got to have someone who can match up with them. Certainly this year they didn't, but these players only improve with time. And South Carolina didn't have Ashlyn Watkins this year, in fairness, right? She did not compete. So having a big like her back, they also loaded up at the big. So having that balance in the front and the backcourt, I think is what kind of differentiates next year's team from this year's team.
Okay. Because I am pretty awesome at what I do, I'm going to show the video of Dawn and Geno. I just got to pull it up. Here it is.
As if you win one national championship, they build a statue to you outside the building. Here, they won't even let you get to the front of the bus.
And contrary to the belief of one of my coaching colleagues, her statue wasn't in response to winning a national championship. It was in response to being a winner at life.
There it is.
Thrilling every time. Thrilling every
time.
Yeah,
and I by the way, shout out to SNY for the video there via X. I think Yahoo Sports was the editor that did the kind of the one shot the other shot type thing. So that was really well done in response. It just crystallizes everything we just said. Like that's where this all started. That's where hopefully this beef, whether manufactured or not, is being started. I want South Carolina fans to be pissed off at this because I want them to feel the way we've felt the last 10 years or so, that we're trying to get back to being on top. And now we are. And Serah Williams is in tow. Kayleigh Heckel may be next. I don't know if Geno's going to give up that throne anytime soon.
Yeah, it's exciting. I again, historian of the game, love to think about the comps. It doesn't, to me, have the same juice yet as like a Pat Summitt, Tennessee, or Muffet McGraw, ND, but maybe it could get there. Who knows? And I'm very curious to see kind of how it continues to evolve. UConn with an SEC opponent has some history in Tennessee, so maybe it could get to that level again. And I love it. I think they're two of they are the two best at their craft in the business. Like and to watch Dawn Staley's rise with this program, similar to like Geno's, like they didn't inherit programs that had any sort of history. Right. Didn't have a history of winning, built it from the bottom up, and you got to respect that, and you got to love it, and you got to love the grind. And they're still at it, and they're still fierce competitors. So I cannot wait to see them match up this year.
Before we close out the show here in a few minutes, what do you think, like when we're talking about Geno's back on the throne and essentially, feeling himself a little bit, was feeling himself at that in the parade or the pep rally? I mean, also let's give some context. You're in front of all UConn students at Gamble. It's like red meat for your constituents, right. Essentially, right? To kind of say things like this, and knowing Geno and having covered him and actually been in the room as him, I do know that he means everything he says. He may tweak things a little bit. He may, be really media savvy, but the dude is he's not a bullshitter. He's not a liar. He is as straight a shooter as you could possibly imagine. So that being said, who are the teams and the coaches that are going to, outside of Dawn Staley, that are going to be pecking at this throne? Obviously, outside of the Big East, because I don't think Creighton's going to do it. But what other SEC teams? Are we talking Tennessee? Are we talking Notre Dame in the ACC? UCLA coming back, although they've had kind of a mass exodus. USC. What are your thoughts?
I think I got to start with LSU. They are a team that finds a way every year. They're perennial Elite Eight, in my opinion. They brought in Mylasia Fulwiley from South Carolina, pulled a rival. they didn't get that big in Serah Williams, but they just always find a way to reload. And, Kim Mulkey's a great coach. You can say what you want about her as a person, and I certainly have a lot to say about her as a person sometimes, but as a coach,
spicy.
She gets the best out of her players. And so I think LSU is one of those teams. I love the idea of the resurgence of Tennessee under Kim Caldwell. She is such an incredibly gifted young coach, brings an energy that I think this sport really needs, of just a different style. She's not afraid to have her style where she, subs 5 players at a time, runs up and down the court, and they beat UConn this year, right? So I think Tennessee, they also had some great pulls from the portal. And if I'm a young person and I'm looking at colleges, like, I'm calling Kim Caldwell and saying, hey, I would love to play for your program, right? Like, that is a program that I think is really on the rise. And then UCLA, I mean, they did lose some talent to the portal, but they also have incredible talent in Lauren Betts, in Sienna Betts, her sister that's coming in, and a great coach in Corey Close. So I think those are the teams that still, as they were this year, remain as the top dogs. And then, who else could sort of step into that space? Notre Dame, always a team that finds a way to make themselves elite. Some transitions there, but they still have Hannah Hidalgo. They still pulled from the portal. So I'm just very excited for the future of this sport, because there are so many teams that are in a position where they could actually challenge to be the top. And historically, that's not always been the case. So I'm very much looking forward to it. And I think, the portal, good, bad, or indifferent, like, it changes the way rosters are created, and it helps a program shift trajectory on a dime sometimes. So I think that's exciting.
Without a doubt. RT, I'm gonna let you go here. I really appreciate you jumping on, talking about Serah, Kayleigh, the shots fired by Dawn Staley, and we'll continue to monitor that. I think that's a fun story to continue to talk about as time goes on. Go enjoy your weekend, and we're gonna send you guys out to our new outro. Go Huskies. Go Big East Energy.
UConn, baby. Home of the champions. Let's go. Even and Kristen, home of the dogs, Geno Auriemma. Pace takes the shot, never taking a fifth, and 11